The building was already awake, long before sunrise. Lights glowed on the top floors. Coffee machines hummed, and voices echoed behind glass walls. This place never really slept. It only paused, just enough to breathe before the next rush. On the lower floors, where no one paid much attention, a man pushed a cleaning cart down a long hallway. The wheels squeaked softly on the polished floor. He moved at a steady pace, careful not to make noise. He had learned long ago that people noticed messes, not the people cleaning them. He was a single father, though no one here knew that. To most employees, he was just the janitor who worked the early shift, the one who emptied trash before meetings and wiped fingerprints off glass walls after everyone else went home. His uniform was simple. His head was usually down, and his presence was easy to ignore down at home. His morning started much earlier. He woke up before his alarm, quietly got dressed, and made breakfast for his daughter. She was still half asleep when he braided her hair or tied her shoes. He packed her lunch, kissed her forehead, and walked her to the bus stop. Only then did his own workday begin. That morning felt no different. Or at least it didn't at first. As he reached the executive floor, he noticed something was off. The air felt tight. Voices were louder than usual. People walked fast, phones pressed to their ears, faces pale and tense. A group of managers stood near the elevator, arguing in low voices. Words like deadline, failure, and millions floated through the air. He slowed his cart, not out of curiosity, but habit. Years of quiet observation had taught him to read rooms without being seen. He could tell when a spill was about to happen, when a meeting had gone badly, when someone was about to cry in the bathroom. This was different. This felt heavier. In one of the glass conference rooms, screens were lit up with charts and lines of code. Several people sat hunched over laptops, their faces lit blue by the glow. Coffee cups were everywhere, some empty, some untouched. The man stopped near the door to wipe a smudge off the glass. As he did, his eyes moved over the screens without meaning to. His body reacted before his mind did. His shoulders stiffened. His grip on the cloth tightened. He recognized the problem. Not all of it. Not every detail, but enough. Inside the room, frustration was growing. A senior engineer slammed his hand on the table. Another leaned back, rubbing his temples. Someone said the system had been tested 100 times. Someone else said that didn't matter now. The presentation was only hours away. Investors from around the world were already flying in. If this system didn't come back online, a deal worth more than $100 million could collapse. Outside the room, the janitor finished cleaning the glass. He moved on, pushing his cart forward, but his mind stayed behind. His heart was beating faster than usual. He had seen this kind of setup before. Years ago, in a very different life. Back then, he wore pressed shirts instead of a uniform. He sat in meetings instead of standing outside them. He fixed problems like this for a living. Complex ones. Expensive ones. Problems where seconds mattered. But that life had ended suddenly. When his wife passed away, everything changed. His daughter was still very small. She needed him more than any company ever could. The long hours, the late-night calls, the constant pressure, it all became impossible. He made a choice that surprised many people. He stepped away. The janitor job didn't pay much, but it paid on time. The hours were stable. And most important, it allowed him to be present. To be there for school plays, doctor visits, quiet evenings at home. To build a life that felt safe again. So he kept his past to himself. Here, no one asked questions. No one expected anything from him beyond clean floors and empty trash bins. And he was fine with that. Until now. He turned down another hallway, but the sound of raised voices followed him. The tension in the air seemed to grow with every step. Phones kept ringing. Footsteps echoed. Someone rushed past him without even seeing him. He stopped again, this time near a whiteboard covered in rushed writing. Symbols, arrows, notes crossed out and rewritten. His eyes scanned it quickly. There it was again. A small mistake. Not obvious. Not the kind you catch if you're tired or stressed or stuck thinking in circles. But clear to someone who had seen it. Before his chest tightened. He knew the fix. He also knew the risk. People like him didn't interrupt meetings on executive floors. People like him didn't speak up about million-dollar systems. People like him stayed quiet, finished their work, and went home. He looked down at his hands. They were rough from years of cleaning chemicals and hard work. Not the hands people expected to save anything. Inside the conference room, the voices grew louder. "This doesn't make sense," someone said. "We're missing something." Another replied, "We don't have time." A third voice snapped out. The janitor felt torn in. Two. One part of him said to walk away, to finish his shift, to pick up his daughter later and pretend this was just another day. The other part, the part he had tried to silence for years, kept whispering that this didn't have to fail. He pushed his cart a little farther and leaned against the wall. His mind raced, running through the steps, checking them again and again. The solution was simple, almost too simple. That was why no one had seen it. He took a deep breath. This was not his problem, but what if it could be? A woman walked out of the conference room, her face pale. She nearly bumped into him and muttered a quick apology without looking up. As the door closed behind her, he heard someone mention the CEO had just arrived. That made his stomach drop. If he spoke now and was wrong, he could lose his job. Stability mattered. His daughter depended on it. There were bills, school supplies, groceries. No safety net. No backup plan. But if he stayed silent and the company collapsed, hundreds of people could lose their jobs too. He stood there, stuck between fear and responsibility. The cleaning cart sat quietly. Beside him, no one noticed the janitor standing in the hallway, holding a cloth in his hand, carrying an answer that could change everything. And as the pressure inside the glass room reached its breaking point, he knew the next few minutes would decide whether he remained invisible or stepped into a moment he could never undo. The janitor walked slowly down the hallway, his mind racing faster than his steps. The voices from the conference room were louder now, sharp and tense. Words like system failure and millions lost cut through the air, making it impossible to ignore. He paused near the corner, pretending to adjust a window pane, but every nerve in his body was alert. Inside the room, the engineers were growing more frustrated. Papers were scattered across the table. Laptops were left open with code still running, and coffee cups sat untouched, growing cold. Every so often, someone would run a hand over their face or mutter under their breath. The CEO paced back and forth, his eyes flicking between screens, his jaw tight, the worry in his expression impossible to hide. The janitor remembered days like this from years ago. He had been in similar rooms, under the weight of impossible deadlines, where a tiny overlooked mistake could have enormous consequences. But back then, the stress had been paired with control. He could speak up, raise his hand, and be listened to. Here, he was invisible, yet the solution was clear to him. He could almost see the mistake on the screen, like a puzzle piece that didn't belong. It was small, something most people would never notice, something hidden in the code like a quiet secret. He rubbed his palms on his uniform, trying to calm the sudden excitement that coursed through him. He wanted to fix it, but fear held him back. He watched one engineer lean forward, scrolling rapidly through lines of code, shaking his head. Another spoke over him, voice tight with stress. The CEO stopped pacing and turned toward the group, voice raised. The tension was thick, pressing against the walls. It was the kind of moment that could break people, a kind of moment that could decide fortunes and futures in an instant. The janitor shifted the weight of his cart and glanced at the conference room door. He had cleaned floors here for years, and never had anyone asked him a question about the work behind the walls. He had watched executives come and go, heard conversations from the corridors, and learned the rhythm of the company. And now, all that quiet observation was screaming at him. He knew he could help. He stopped for a moment, breathing deeply. The janitor wasn't supposed to step into meetings, wasn't supposed to touch anything beyond the floors and windows. But he also wasn't supposed to ignore a problem that could hurt hundreds of people. The responsibility pressed down on him in a way that was almost unbearable. He thought of his daughter waiting at home, and a strange calm washed over him. He could do this. He had done difficult things before. He could do this one too. The engineers were still struggling. A young programmer muttered something about missing data, while another slammed his hand against the table in frustration. The CEO's face was pale, eyes darting between the screens, knowing the clock was ticking and that each minute lost could be catastrophic. He glanced at the screens through the glass, and the problem revealed itself again. The misstep was small but crucial, buried in the middle of hundreds of lines of code. Any experienced engineer could see it with a careful eye, but the panic had clouded their thinking. Their focus had become chaos, and chaos always hides the simple solutions. He reached for his cloth and wiped another smudge from the glass, an excuse to lean closer without drawing attention. His mind ran through the steps he had learned long ago, imagining how to correct the mistake. He could almost feel the lines of code rearranging themselves, the system coming back online. His heart beat faster. He knew it was possible, but he also knew he had to act carefully. One wrong word, one wrong suggestion, and he could be dismissed immediately. Or worse, his solution could be ignored, and the consequences would fall on someone else. He weighed his options, every second stretching longer than the last. The CEO finally turned toward the engineers, frustration clear in his voice. "We don't have time for guesswork. Someone fix this now." The room went quiet for a moment. Tension filled the air like a heavy fog. The janitor stepped back slightly, gripping the handle of his cart. He was invisible, yes, but he could no longer stand by silently. He had the knowledge. He had the skill. And now he had a choice. He took a few steps forward, his voice low but firm. "Excuse me," he said. Heads turned. Phones stopped ringing. Eyes narrowed. The CEO's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "Who said that?" he demanded. I think I know what the issue is," the janitor said, his hands trembling slightly as he held the cloth. "I mean, if you want me to show it." A ripple of murmurs ran through the room. The lead engineer frowned. The young programmer tilted his head. The CEO's eyes hardened, skeptical and alert. "And you are?" I work here. I mean, I clean. But I used to work with systems like this. I think I know the problem," he said, words tripping over each other. He felt exposed, vulnerable. He was just a janitor, invisible for years, suddenly standing in a room full of decision-makers. The CEO stared at him, weighing the moment, before saying sharply, "Show us, fast." He walked to the nearest laptop, his hands steady now, guided by muscle memory from years ago. He scrolled to the section of code that had been causing the problem, explaining in simple words what he had seen. His voice grew more confident as he spoke, pointing out the overlooked command. The tiny error that had cascaded into chaos. At first, the engineers were hesitant. eyes darting between screens and the janitor, unsure if this was serious. But slowly, the logic began to make sense. One by one, they adjusted the code according to his guidance, testing and retesting. The system started responding. The tension in the room shifted, just slightly, hope flickering for the first time in hours. The CEO leaned closer to watch, his expression a mix of disbelief and curiosity. This quiet man in a uniform, the one who had always been invisible, was now guiding the experts, rescuing the situation. Minutes stretched, the pressure still heavy, but a new rhythm emerged. The commands were executed, the charts on the screen began to align, and the system came back online. For a heartbeat, silence filled the room. Then a collective exhale. The engineers looked at each other, disbelief and relief mingling in their expressions. The CEO's face softened, shock replaced by admiration. "Where did you learn to do this?" The CEO asked, voice low, almost reverent. The janitor shrugged, a small, tired smile on his face. "A long time ago. I used to work with systems like this. Then I had other responsibilities." The CEO nodded slowly, taking in the truth behind the words. The room felt different now, lighter, almost as if the tension had evaporated. Everyone had been saved from disaster by a man they had ignored for years. The janitor stepped back, returning to his cart, pretending to resume cleaning. But he knew he had crossed an invisible line. He had shown his worth in a way that could never be unseen. As he walked toward the door, a young engineer called out, "Thank you. Really. I don't know how we would have fixed it without you." He nodded, saying nothing. Words weren't necessary. The job was done, and the system was safe. That was enough for him for now. He passed by the CEO again, and their eyes met. There was a silent understanding. The CEO knew he had just witnessed something extraordinary. The janitor knew he had just done something necessary, something that mattered. He returned to his hallway, cart moving quietly on the polished floors. The chaos in the conference room faded behind him, replaced by the familiar routine of cleaning. But inside, he felt a spark. A reminder that even invisible people could make a difference when the moment demanded it. The morning sun was rising higher, spilling light into the hallways, catching on the polished surfaces. He thought of his daughter, waiting for breakfast, waiting for a father who always tried to do the right thing. He knew he would tell her the story differently, someday, not about codes and systems, but about standing up, about courage, and about quiet people who can change everything without being noticed. The janitor walked back to the elevator, his cart moving quietly along the polished floor. The adrenaline from the morning's chaos was still in his veins, but he forced himself to breathe slowly, to appear calm. He had solved the problem, saved the company millions, and yet he felt invisible. That was his place, he reminded himself. He didn't need recognition. He just needed to do his job and keep his life together for his daughter. But the building seemed different now. People were glancing at him, whispering to each other as he passed. Some paused mid-step, watching him with curiosity and disbelief. He tried not to notice. He was a professional at fading into the background, at letting others take the spotlight. Upstairs, the CEO was gathering his executive team. The tension that had filled the morning was easing, replaced by relief and cautious excitement. The deal was back on track, the system stable, and the company's future secure for now. Yet something had shifted. Everyone in the room had seen something they hadn't expected. A janitor, quiet and unnoticed for years, had solved a problem that could have brought the company to its knees. In the hallway, the janitor paused near a window, staring out at the city below. He could see the traffic flowing, the people moving on their daily routines, oblivious to the drama that had unfolded in the building above them. He thought about his daughter, her laughter, the small hands he held in the morning. It was for her that he kept moving forward, even when life felt heavy. The world outside didn't notice him, but she did, and that was enough. He returned to his cart, resuming his cleaning with practiced motions. Yet every now and then his mind wandered back to the conference room, to the flicker of disbelief on the engineers' faces, the quiet gratitude that hadn't been spoken aloud, the weight of the CEO's gaze. It was a strange mix of pride and fear. Pride because he had done something extraordinary, and fear because he had stepped into a world where he didn't belong. The morning continued, the usual routines carrying on around him. Trash was emptied, floors were swept, windows wiped clean. Meetings were held, phones rang, and people moved from one office to another. The janitor worked quietly, his presence barely noticed, yet inside, he felt a shift he couldn't ignore. Later, a young engineer approached him cautiously as he polished a railing. "Hey," the engineer said, voice low. "I just wanted to say, thanks. Seriously, we couldn't have done it without you." The janitor nodded, offering a small, tired smile. "Just doing my job," he said, though the words felt inadequate. He knew the engineer meant more than that. They had all seen it. They had all witnessed something unexpected and remarkable. He continued down the hallway, emptying trash and wiping surfaces. Each step felt heavier now, as if the weight of what had happened was settling on his shoulders. He had crossed a line he never intended to cross, entered a space he wasn't meant to be in. And yet, a quiet part of him felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. He had been seen, in a way, even if only for a moment. As he moved, he overheard snippets of conversation from other employees. "Did you see that?" One whispered. "I can't believe it." The janitor fixed it. Another voice added, "Who knew he had that experience?" "No one ever talks about it." The janitor felt a mixture of amusement and discomfort. People noticed now, and he wasn't sure how to react. He had always preferred the shadows, the quiet, the unnoticed. Recognition was a strange, almost foreign sensation. He returned to a bathroom to refill supplies, and as he washed his hands, he caught his reflection in the mirror. His face was tired, eyes a little brighter, cheeks slightly flushed. He looked ordinary, and yet he had done something extraordinary. The contrast between how he appeared and what he had accomplished felt surreal. Back in the hallway, he heard the elevator ding and a familiar voice calling his name. The CEO. His stomach tightened. He turned, unsure if he was ready for what was coming. The CEO stepped out, his expression unreadable, but there was a tension in his posture that suggested both curiosity and respect. "Can I talk to you for a moment?" The CEO asked, his voice steady but commanding. The janitor nodded, setting down his cart. He followed the CEO down a side hallway, away from the bustling offices. The air was quieter here, filled only with the hum of the building's systems. He felt a flicker of anxiety. He wasn't sure what to expect. The CEO stopped and faced him. "I watched what you did this morning," he said. "You saved the company. You saved jobs, millions of dollars, and possibly a lot of stress for all of us. I want to understand how." The janitor took a deep breath. "I used to work with systems like this," he said, simp. "Lie. Years ago, before life changed. I learned to notice things others might miss, to fix problems under pressure. That's all." The CEO nodded slowly. He studied the janitor for a long moment, as if trying to measure the truth in his words. Then he said, "You didn't have to say anything. You could have stayed quiet. But you didn't. You stepped in when it mattered most. That's rare." The janitor shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what I could," he said. The CEO smiled faintly, a rare warmth in his eyes. "I think it's time the company recognized talent when it appears, no matter where it comes from. You've proven that. The janitor felt a knot in his stomach, a mix of nerves and something else he couldn't quite name. Recognition was unfamiliar, almost unwelcome in its intensity. He had always measured his worth in quiet ways, in small victories at home, in keeping his daughter safe and happy. Public acknowledgement was not something he sought. Still, he couldn't deny a sense of pride. He had stepped forward when it mattered. He had acted, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. And that was something no one could take away. As he returned to his cleaning, the atmosphere in the building seemed subtly altered. Conversations carried his name in hushed tones. People watched him a little more closely. There was a new awareness of his presence, an acknowledgement that he was more than just a janitor. He carried himself a little taller, though he tried not to notice. Throughout the day, he moved through the offices, finishing his tasks, adjusting to the strange attention without seeking it. Each step was careful, measured, as if navigating a world that had shifted slightly beneath his feet. He thought about his daughter, how she would laugh if she knew her dad had saved millions before breakfast. The thought brought a smile to his face, quiet and small, but real. By mid-afternoon, the initial excitement had settled into a hum of productivity. The system was stable, meetings continued, and the CEO had returned to his office. Yet, the janitor could feel the lingering ripple of what had happened. People had seen something extraordinary. They had seen courage, skill, and quick thinking in a place they least expected it. He paused near a window, looking out at the city again. The sunlight had shifted, shadows stretching long across the streets. Life moved on outside, unaware of the quiet hero who had just walked the floors above. He thought about his daughter, about the life he had built in the shadows, and about the moment that had changed everything, if only for a few people to notice. He returned to his work, methodical and careful. Each sweep of the floor, each emptying of a trash bin, felt different now. There was a weight to his actions, a knowledge that even the smallest work could coexist with the extraordinary. He smiled faintly to himself, thinking that perhaps the world was more connected than he had realized. As the day drew toward evening, he finished his rounds and prepared to leave. The building was quieter now, the hum of the offices replaced by the soft echo of cleaning equipment and distant voices. He locked up supply closets, adjusted lights, and pushed his cart to the exit. The air outside was crisp, a city alive with evening energy. He took a deep breath, feeling both exhaustion and a strange, exhilarating satisfaction. He thought about tomorrow, about the routine that would resume, about the unnoticed heroics that would go unseen again. Yet, deep down, he knew he had left a mark, however small, on the lives of those who had witnessed it. And that knowledge, quiet and private, was enough to carry him forward, step by step, toward the next challenge, the next day, and the next moment that mattered. The afternoon moved slowly into evening, the sun dipping lower behind the city skyline, casting long shadows across the polished floors of the corporate building. The janitor pushed his cart down the main hallway, his movements practiced and precise, but his mind kept wandering back to the events of the morning. The memory of the conference room, the tension, the moment he had spoken up. It all played in his mind like a movie he couldn't turn off. He paused by a window, watching the people on the streets below, moving with purpose, unaware of the drama that had unfolded inside the building above them. He thought about how small a person can feel in the grand scheme of a city, and yet, in certain moments, even the quietest individuals can make a difference. The building had grown quieter now. Most employees had left for the day, but a few remained, hunched over laptops or gathering their things. The CEO's office door remained closed, and the janitor wondered if he would be summoned again. Part of him hoped not. He was used to invisibility. Recognition felt strange, almost uncomfortable. As he moved to clean a hallway near the executive offices, he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up to see the CEO himself walking toward him. The janitor's heart skipped a beat. He straightened, pushing the cart slowly to appear casual, though his palms were clammy. "Can I walk with you for a moment?" The CEO asked, his tone calm but serious. The janitor nodded, following him down a quieter corridor. The hum of the building's systems was the only sound, along with their footsteps echoing softly on the polished floor. "I've been thinking about this morning," the CEO began. "What you did. It wasn't just helpful. It was extraordinary. I want the company to know." The janitor shook his head slightly. "I don't need anyone to know," he said. "I just did what I could. That's all." The CEO stopped and turned to face him fully. "I understand, but this isn't just about recognition. It's about fairness. It's about showing people that talent and courage are valuable, no matter where they come from. What you did saved us. I can't ignore that." The janitor felt a lump in his throat. He was used to living quietly, to blending in. Praise and recognition were uncomfortable for him. But the sincerity in the CEO's voice made it impossible to dismiss. "Look," the CEO continued, "I don't want to force you into anything you're not comfortable with. But I want you to consider a different role here. A role where your skills can be used without hiding them. You could lead projects, guide teams, make decisions that matter, all while keeping your flexibility. I know you have responsibilities outside of work." The janitor stared at him, trying to process the words. He had spent years protecting his quiet life, prioritizing his daughter above all else. The thought of stepping into a spotlight, of taking on responsibilities that might threaten the stability he had built, made him nervous. Yet a small part of him felt a spark of excitement. "I appreciate that," he said slowly, "but I'm not sure I'm ready for that. I've built a life that works for me and my daughter. I don't want to risk that." The CEO nodded, understanding. "I don't want to push you. I want you to know the opportunity exists. When you're ready, or if you ever feel ready, the door is open. And know this, the entire company owes you a debt of gratitude, whether you want it or not." The janitor gave a small nod, a mixture of gratitude and hesitation in his expression. They walked together in silence for a few moments, the quiet of the corridor offering a contrast to the chaos of earlier in the day. Then the CEO stopped and placed a hand lightly on the janitor's shoulder. "You did the right thing today," he said simply. That's all anyone could ask. The janitor felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet reassurance. He had always measured his worth in small ways, being there for his daughter, keeping his world in order, helping when he could in silence. Today had been different. Today, his actions had mattered on a much larger scale. After the CEO left, the janitor returned to his cleaning, but the atmosphere in the building felt subtly different. People he passed looked at him with a new awareness, some whispering quietly to each other. It wasn't overwhelming, not yet, but he could feel the change. He had crossed a threshold, moving from invisibility to someone whose actions could no longer be ignored. That he moved through the hallways with the same careful routine, emptying trash bins, wiping down surfaces, polishing railings. Yet every sweep of the floor, every quiet movement, felt charged with a new significance. He had acted when it mattered most, and that knowledge gave him a quiet pride he hadn't felt in years. Later, as he walked past the conference rooms, he overheard snippets of conversations. "Did you see that?" One whispered, "I can't believe it." "He fixed it all?" Another voice added, "We should have known. He's been here so long. Quiet, but brilliant." The janitor smiled faintly to himself, a small acknowledgement that people had noticed, even if he would never fully be comfortable with it. He knew his life would not change overnight, He would still clean floors, empty trash, and walk the corridors quietly. But the day's events had left a mark that could not be erased. He paused in a hallway near a large window, looking out at the city bathed in the golden light of evening. The streets were full of people hurrying to their destinations, completely unaware of the small dramas that played out in the buildings around them. The contrast between the vast, indifferent city and the moments of human courage he had experienced felt striking. His thoughts drifted to his daughter. She would be home soon, full of energy, questions, and laughter. She was the reason he had chosen a life of quiet stability, the reason he had stepped away from his previous career. Today, he had acted not for recognition or reward, but because it was the right thing to do. And that, he realized, was the same principle he had taught his daughter every day. The building quieted further as employees finished their day and left for home. The janitor continued his rounds, each motion precise, each task completed with care. The weight of the day settled on his shoulders, but it was a comforting weight, a reminder that he had made a difference. As he returned to his supply closet to organize equipment and prepare for the next day, he reflected on the events that had unfolded. Recognition and praise were strange, almost uncomfortable, but they could also be powerful. They reminded people, even those who preferred quiet lives, that their actions could have far-reaching consequences. The janitor finished his work, locked up the supplies, and pushed his cart toward the exit. The city outside was alive with evening energy, lights flickering in buildings, cars moving along streets, people heading home. He paused for a moment, taking it all in, feeling the weight of his day and the quiet satisfaction of knowing he had done something meaningful. As he stepped outside, the cool evening air filled his lungs. He looked up at the sky, the fading light casting a soft glow over the city. His thoughts returned to his daughter, waiting at home, and a smile spread across his face. Recognition and opportunity were things he could consider later. For now, he had his life, his purpose, and the knowledge that even quiet actions could make a powerful difference. He walked toward the bus stop, his cart pushed to the side, moving through the streets with a steady, calm rhythm. The city hummed around him, alive and indifferent, yet he felt connected to it in a way he hadn't before. Today had shown him that even a quiet, unnoticed person could shape the outcome of events that mattered to many. As the evening deepened, he continued toward home, ready to greet his daughter, to listen to her stories, to share a meal, and to be present in the life that mattered most. The day had changed him, shown him that courage and skill could appear in unexpected forms, and reminded him that even in quiet lives, moments of extraordinary impact could happen. And in that thought, he found peace, pride, and a quiet excitement for the days yet to come. The morning sun was just beginning to filter through the large windows of the corporate building, casting soft light across the polished floors. The janitor pushed his cart down the familiar hallways, his movements calm and deliberate, though a quiet anticipation ran through him. Today felt different. There was a shift in the air, subtle but undeniable, as if the building itself acknowledged the events of the past days. Word had spread quickly. Employees whispered as he passed, some offering quiet smiles, others nodding respectfully. The janitor moved through the hallways with the ease of routine, but inside, his mind turned to the meeting that had been scheduled. The CEO had asked him to attend, promising it would be brief. Still, he felt a nervous weight settle in his chest. Recognition was not something he was used to, and he did not know how he would react. As he entered the conference room, the hum of conversation quieted. Chairs scraped softly against the floor as employees turned to see him. The room was filled with people who had witnessed the crisis and its resolution, all gathered to acknowledge what had happened. The CEO stood at the front, his expression calm but serious, eyes scanning the room until they settled on the janitor. Thank you all for coming, the CEO began. Today, we recognize someone whose actions went far beyond their job description. Someone whose courage and skill prevented a crisis that could have affected this entire company. That person is here with us. The janitor felt his stomach tighten. He had expected a brief acknowledgement, perhaps a few words of thanks. But the room was filled with anticipation, eyes focused on him. He cleared his throat, trying to steady himself as the CEO continued. This morning, when our systems failed, and when all of our experts were struggling, one person stepped forward. One person saw what no one else could. That person acted quickly, calmly, and saved not just a deal, but countless jobs and the reputation of this company. The janitor's eyes shifted across the room. Engineers, managers, and colleagues he had passed countless times without notice now looked at him with admiration. He felt a warmth spread through him, a mix of pride and humility. He had acted because it was necessary, not for recognition. And yet, the acknowledgement was deeply human, touching something he had long kept quiet. The CEO gestured for him to come forward. We are offering a new role, one that values your skills and experience. It will allow you to contribute in ways you have shown you can, without compromising your life outside of work. Flexible hours, leadership opportunities, and the respect you deserve. The janitor stepped forward slowly, his hands gripping the handle of his cart. He looked at the people around him, feeling a connection he had never experienced before. Recognition was strange, yes, but it was also grounding. It reminded him that his choices, his expertise, and his quiet diligence mattered. I don't know what to say, he said, his voice steady but soft. I've always done what I could, quietly. I never expected this. I just wanted to do my job well and be there for my daughter. The CEO smiled warmly. And that is exactly why your actions are so remarkable. You acted out of integrity and responsibility. That is what makes you extraordinary. A ripple of applause spread through the room. The janitor felt a flush of emotion he hadn't anticipated. The recognition was not for ego or pride, but for the human truth in his actions, the care, the skill, and the courage to step forward when it mattered most. The CEO continued, addressing the group. Let this be a reminder to all of us. Talent, courage, and integrity can come from anywhere. And sometimes, the quietest voices have the most to teach us. The janitor felt a mix of relief and gratitude. He had spent years in the shadows, unnoticed, yet he realized that his actions had weight. He had made a difference in ways he had never imagined. And now, the acknowledgement was not just a formality. It was a recognition of the human impact of his choices. After the meeting, employees approached him one by one, offering words of thanks, handshakes, and quiet congratulations. Each interaction was brief but meaningful, reinforcing the sense that he had crossed a threshold from invisibility to valued presence. He felt a quiet joy, a reassurance that doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, can have profound consequences. As the day continued, the janitor returned to his usual tasks, but everything felt different. The routine of cleaning, organizing, and maintaining the building was familiar, yet now it was layered with a sense of purpose that extended beyond the physical work. He had been seen, acknowledged, and respected for his abilities and his choices. Later, as he prepared to leave for the day, the CEO approached him one last time. Take your time deciding about the new role, he said. There's no rush. Know that the offer stands, and the company is better because of you. The janitor nodded, a small smile on his face. He appreciated the gesture, the thoughtfulness, and the opportunity. He had spent years prioritizing stability for his daughter, and now he knew he could balance that with contributing in ways he had never imagined. Walking out into the evening air, the janitor felt a sense of peace. The city was alive around him, people moving to their destinations, unaware of the quiet drama that had unfolded in the building above. He thought about his daughter, about the life he had built in quiet dedication, and about the moments of courage and skill that could change everything in an instant. He knew that recognition and opportunity were powerful, but he also knew that his true reward was in knowing he had done the right thing. The world outside could continue in its rush, but he had left a mark, subtle yet undeniable, on the people and the company that mattered. That evening, he returned home, greeted by the laughter and stories of his daughter. They shared a meal, talked about their day, and enjoyed the simple joys of life. He realized that no matter what recognition came, no matter what role he chose, these moments of connection, love, and presence were what truly defined his life. The day had changed him. It had shown him that even in a quiet, ordinary life, extraordinary actions could emerge. It had reminded him that courage, skill, and integrity could come from unexpected places. And it had shown him that when the right moment arrived, stepping forward with quiet confidence could shape the course of many lives. As he tucked his daughter into bed that night, he reflected on the events of the past day and the days to come. Recognition and opportunity were there if he chose them. But the essence of his life, the love for his daughter, the dedication to doing right, and the quiet courage to act remained unchanged. He turned off the lights, leaving the room filled with soft shadows and the gentle rhythm of the city outside. He knew that tomorrow and the days after would hold new challenges, new choices, and new moments where his actions could matter. And he felt ready, grounded in the knowledge that even the quietest individuals could shape extraordinary outcomes when the moment demanded it. The janitor stepped outside once more, the city lights casting a warm glow on the streets. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill his lungs. Life had a way of surprising even those who thought they understood their place in it. And he, a single father who had walked unnoticed for years, had learned that courage, skill, and integrity could shine in moments that mattered most. He walked home slowly, reflecting on the journey he had taken and the steps ahead. The world could continue in its rush, unaware of the quiet heroism that existed within it, but he had witnessed it, lived it, and shaped it. And that was enough. That was more than enough.